What does it take to be a professional music producer and be able to work as a producer, earning and paying your bills and being successful in this? This is a question that gets asked a lot by young up-and-coming producers or beat makers or people that are just starting off making music. And this is exactly why I wanted to do this video, so you can have 12 tips that will bring you to that end goal of being a professional music producer much quicker. And so you're aware, I haven't laid these out in any order of urgency or importance because I think they're all as important as each other. So please watch the whole video to get the full benefit. Okay, tip number 1 is make sacrifices. You look at anyone that has made a lot of success of themselves in whatever field they're doing, and they will tell you about the amount of sacrifices they have had to make. Be it a work sacrifice, or a financial sacrifice, or a personal sacrifice of not being able to go out as much, or not be able to go and see a movie as much, or spend as much time watching TV, or being on your Instagram, or whatever you might be doing. You're gonna have to be brutal and literally make a list and cut out everything you can. Give it 110%, really dedicate your life to it. And just to add to that, if you are going to make a sacrifice by losing your 9-to-5 income and jumping straight into production, just be aware that regardless of how much time you've already been doing tracks with people, and maybe you've got a few jobs in where people have maybe paid you for something, or you've got a little bit of success coming up in your life now, just be aware that when you do jump across into not having a financial income and expecting that from music production, that there is a transitional period, and look at that realistically before you commit. And then tip number 2, listen to other people's music. Listen to as much of it as you can. In an hour a day, I would say, is probably a good thing to do. And listen to different styles of music. Don't just listen to the music that you're recording or that you're making. Listen to different styles of music, completely different, completely out of your comfort zone if possible, and try and appreciate for what it's doing. Listen to the arrangement, listen to the vocals, listen to the chord changes, listen to what the bass is doing, what the production is doing. I can go on and on and on, but just listen to it properly and try and study it a little bit. And that will broaden your skills as a producer because you'll be influenced by it. And then tip number 3, and that is finishing your productions fully. So a lot of beat makers tend to make a nice little groove and then kind of put it around maybe a 24-bar loop, put a little verse in really quickly and jam around with it, done. Next one. And they just churn out a number and a number and a number of them, which is great. And that's a good exercise in itself. But in order for you to become a producer, you have to finish tracks. Get your little 8-bar idea or your 16-bar idea and then start arranging that. Then work out how the intro works and where does the song come in. If you don't have a song, find an a cappella. Any a cappella. Doesn't matter if it's a known a cappella or if it's one that you've just put on there yourself as a little guide. Try and go through the process. It's even better if you can record a vocal, or if you've got a friend maybe that can do a bit of rapping or can sing, bring them in, go through the process of doing the recording phase and the editing the vocals and everything else that you've got to do as a producer, because you don't have an engineer, you don't have a programmer, you got to do it all yourself. So do that phase, go through that, and then mix the track, completely mix it, arrange it, like as if you're delivering it to, say, a really big record label. Do that, go through that stage, finish your tracks. And then tip number 4, and that is learn music theory. And I know that's going to take some time to be a master at that, but you can start off really from the basics and get an idea of what music theory is all about. There are books you can get, there are small courses that you can get online. I think Udemy do some of them as well. Get yourself understanding about progressions, chords, melodies. Get to understand as much as you can there. The more you know about that, the easier it's going to be able to create and also to understand how instruments work together, etc., etc. But definitely a big point, that one. And that brings me to tip number 5, and that is mixing and sound design. You can have the greatest ideas and you can have the greatest tracks, but if you can't mix them and if you can't make the sounds a certain way, or if you can't design certain sounds, then you can't really portray that great idea as well as you could do if you mixed it. So if you can get yourself into a mixing school or a mixing class, that would be really great, but they tend to be very expensive. But of course, you have got YouTube there and you can do a lot on YouTube. You can find out a lot of stuff. Just be careful that you don't get sucked into listening to too many people, because everybody has their own little way of doing it. You need to learn the fundamentals of mixing and understand what that's about and how you get a good mix going. And then there's sound design, and mixing is sound design, but there's also sound design from your plugin. So you can go into a bass plugin that you've got, or bass preset, and really twist it and get the best out of it. That's all sound design as well. So you can definitely get stuff like that on YouTube, and there's a lot of that on there as well. And now tip number 6, and that is work with other people. Find yourself producers, beat makers, musicians, writers, anybody in the industry that's further than you down the line. They're ahead of you, because even if you don't know exactly how they're doing what they're doing, you'll still learn a lot about the process of what they're doing. Or work with, say, for instance, a programmer that knows your DAW really well, so that by him just moving around and doing his things, just by being in the room and watching him, you pick up so much, and you can implement that into your workflow, and that makes you work much quicker. Another cool thing you can do is contact local studios and say to them that you would like to volunteer for weekend work, maybe do 3 or 4 hours where you could be an assistant. So you can just make teas, you can go down the road and get some food for people, or you can just help lift stuff around, but just so that you can be in that studio environment and you can maybe meet some really cool and interesting people. And meanwhile, you're learning all the time.